Welcome to the Peak Performance and Peak Satisfaction podcast with Master Executive Coach Sherry Gregoff. Sherry helps business people perform better, get rewarded handsomely, and actually enjoy their work. After having her own career turnaround, she now helps other high-powered business professionals experience the same. Join the movement to work differently.
Welcome to the podcast. It's great to have you here. In your role as a business professional, there is the work of the day-to-day, and then there's the strategic work to design the future. Sometimes we deprioritize the latter, thinking we don't have time. But underneath that, we might be procrastinating on the more challenging work. Here's how to roll up your sleeves and get it done. Before we jump in, I want to shout out one of my clients who had a win in this area. Here's what she shared with me. Sherry helped me look at my leader's suggestion by taking a broader perspective. By honoring his advice, I wasn't closing a door on my top pick for my next role, but instead opening even more doors so I would have options. Some call it playing checkers versus playing chess. In business, it's helpful to develop the habit of looking 3 steps out from every decision. I did this recently with a client who was evaluating why her leader would have made a decision to guide her a certain way in her career advancement. Without giving it much thought, she planned to recommit to her first preference and contradict his guidance. But when we paused to consider why he suggested what he did and how it might open up even more opportunities to her, she saw the situation differently. From there, she recognized the decision that she could make that would maximize her options in the future and build on the decision of her boss's boss. You could see the light bulb go off by thinking through the network of interdependent players and potential future scenarios that would have implications for the business and her career. Looking through this lens gave her broader perspective, more clarity, and confidence in making the call. You can map it out instead of guessing, actually thinking it through step by step, the way you'd study a chess match, instead of just reacting to the last move. Ask yourself, what are they protecting? What pressure are they under that you may not realize? What would need to be true 6 months from now for this decision to make sense? If they truly had your best interests at heart, how would this advice be logical? You won't just react anymore. You will start to see the whole board. This thinking ahead is one part of what we are after in setting the strategic direction of your business. I see wins like this across my clients, and I've experienced them also in my career. That's why I'm excited to talk about today's topic. Let's jump in and get you on your way to experiencing this too. Coming into a role in a business that's already running smoothly, well-defined, predictable, that is rare. Almost nobody ends up in that situation. Usually, the business is in hypergrowth, and you're pulling out every stop just to keep pace with demand that you didn't fully plan for. Or the business is under real pressure. Performance is dipping, market share is shrinking, and nobody above you has a clean answer either. They're looking to you the same way you might be looking to them. Which means your job was never to follow the manual that the last person left behind. It's to figure out something that hasn't been figured out yet, and then to get enough people to back it that it actually happens. 2 different kinds of hard. Thinking clearly when there's no roadmap, and getting other people to move with you once you have one. Both of them can be terrifying if we're honest. And both of them are exactly why some leaders spend years circling the safe, well-defined tasks instead of doing either. Let's talk about the first one, making the space to actually think deeply about your business and its future. Here's what that looks like in real life. You've got the big, ambiguous, important task sitting in front of you. The only thing you can really work through because it requires your judgment, your view of the whole business, not just execution. And instead, you sit in on your team member's status meeting. You give a second set of eyes on someone else's deck. You clear out your inbox. You answer the Slack messages that were piling up. Maybe you tell yourself you're modeling good management by staying close to the details with your team. None of that is wrong. All of it is productive. You'll feel like you did something today. You'll go home tired in the satisfying way, the way that makes it easy to believe that you earned your paycheck. But your brain is doing something sneaky underneath all of that. It's choosing the task that it already knows how to do over the task that actually matters, because certainty feels better than ambiguity, even when the ambiguous thing is worth 10 times more. I see this consistently with clients who are, by every measure, excellent operators. Give them a defined problem and they'll solve it beautifully. Give them a blank page and watch how quickly they find a reason to leave it blank a little longer. It's like deciding to organize your desk before analyzing that pending strategic decision. Maybe your inbox is clean, or every team's message is answered within minutes. You tell yourself you're being efficient and responsible, but really you're hiding in plain sight. Inside work that feels productive, but isn't really the work that matters. Then there's the second pull, saying yes. A meeting invite lands and you accept it before you've asked whether you really need to be there. Someone asks for 5 minutes and it becomes 40. A new priority gets announced and you absorb it into your week without asking what it displaces. We feel important when we're needed in the moment. There's a small hit of value in being the person everyone comes to. So we tell ourselves, let me just handle this now instead of later. Every one of those small yeses pushes the one thing that actually would move the business further down your list. Not because you decided it didn't matter, because you never really decided anything at all. The list just rearranged itself around whoever asked first. I want to be clear. This isn't about becoming someone who says no to everything and disappears behind a closed door. Leaders need to be present and responsive, sure. But there's a difference between being responsive by choice and being responsive by default. One is leadership. The other is just reacting all day and calling it a job. And under both of these is a third thing, the one nobody says out loud, a quiet fear that if you give the ambiguous work your best effort and it still doesn't work out, that's not just disappointing. It feels risky in a bigger way, maybe even career-defining in the wrong direction. I've had clients tell me almost sheepishly that some part of them believes that if they take the big swing and miss by proposing the wrong strategic direction, that will be the story that follows them. Nobody remembers the person who ran a tight status meeting. Everybody remembers the person whose big idea flopped. So it seems the safer move is to stay busy with what's certain. It doesn't feel like avoidance, it feels like diligence. That's what makes it so hard to catch yourself doing it. Here's what I'd ask you to sit with instead. The strategic, ambiguous work isn't the risky choice. It's the reason you were hired. Avoiding it is the actual risk. You just don't feel it as sharply because it shows up later, as someone else's business outpacing yours, or as a role that gets restructured out from under you because nobody could point to what you were driving forward. So here's what I'd invite you to do, not eventually, this week. Block half a day. It doesn't have to be Friday afternoon. Pick whatever time slot you feel that you will be able to be creative and be able to deeply concentrate. Book that on your calendar, defend it then, like a client meeting. No meetings booked into it. Email and Teams messages, they don't get answered during it. Tell your group if you need to, or set an auto response so nobody wonders where you went. I want to tell you honestly what usually happens the first time someone tries this, because it's rarely smooth. The first attempt, something urgent comes up and eats into that time block anyway. That's normal. It doesn't mean the exercise failed, but it means you're seeing exactly how strong the pull towards busyness really is. The second attempt, people usually protect the time, but then sit there for the first 20 minutes, not knowing what to do with themselves. That discomfort is worth noticing too. If sitting with an open, undefined hour feels uncomfortable, that tells you how rarely you actually give yourself this kind of space to do deep work. By the third or fourth week, most of my clients tell me the half day starts to feel like the most valuable block on their calendar, not the most expendable one. So once you're in that space, sit first with a few high-level questions and don't rush through them. Write your answers down because seeing your own thinking on a page changes it. What's the most pressing challenge or threat facing your business right now? Not the version that you'd say in a meeting, the honest version. If nothing changes, what happens? Play it out a year from now. Be specific. Vague answers here usually mean you haven't let yourself really look. What's the biggest opportunity in front of you in the next year? Sometimes this is easier to answer than the first question because opportunity feels safer to name than threat. What needs to change now to actually take advantage of that opportunity? This is where most people stall because the honest answer usually involves undoing something that currently feels safe. Who needs to understand this and agree to it for it to actually happen? Hold on to this last question. We're going to come back to it. Now, when starting with a blank piece of paper or a wide open whiteboard, this can feel overwhelming. My clients often ask for a framework to use as a starting point to get the wheels turning. Here are a few that you may know, but maybe haven't used in a while, or some that maybe you haven't seen yet. You can look any of these up and get more information, but here's enough to be dangerous and to get you started in earnest, investing more of your skill in the strategic work. First, expanding on those high-level questions that we began with, is the SWOT analysis, one of the simplest and most widely used strategic planning tools. It's going to help you understand both your organization's internal capabilities and the external environment so that you can make better decisions. A really clean way to look at this is through a 2x2 matrix. So one column would be internal to the business, the second is external. One row is what's helpful, and the second row is what's harmful. So you've got your strengths, internally, what's helpful to the business, your weaknesses, internally, what's harmful to the business, your opportunities, externally, what's helpful to the business, and your threats, externally, what's harmful to the business. Within strengths, consider deeply what gives your business a competitive advantage. Maybe these are internal capabilities and resources that you can leverage as you go forward. It could be your brand equity, or maybe the skill of your leadership team, loyal customers, the healthy cash flow in your business. Maybe it's proprietary technology that you've developed, or an excellent culture. So to find what these things are, you can ask yourself, what is it that we do better than our competitors? What resources do we have access to that are unique to us? And why do our clients choose us? On weaknesses, consider what's limiting your business success, internal factors or obstacles that are holding you back. Maybe it's high employee turnover or limited budget for marketing. Maybe your technology is aging or your processes are inefficient. Maybe in your workforce you have skill gaps, or maybe your customer service is weak. So ask yourself, where is it that we're struggling right now? What complaints do we hear from clients? What capabilities are we missing where we've got some gaps? Next, opportunities. Think about what external trends are happening that your business is well positioned to take advantage of. Examples might be growing market demand in a certain segment. Maybe AI automation presents an opportunity here. Expanding into new customer segments, maybe regulatory changes underfoot might actually benefit you, or some of your competitors might be exiting the market. So ask yourself here, what trends are happening around us or trends that we anticipate that could benefit us? What unmet client needs exist? What partnerships and collaborations could we introduce that would accelerate our growth? And then lastly, threats. What are external forces that could hurt the business? Maybe it's new competitors or an economic downturn, maybe rising costs for your business or supply chain disruptions. Maybe changing regulations is actually a threat for you, or new technology, AI making your offering obsolete. So ask yourself, what's keeping you awake at night? What are competitors doing well? What market changes could hurt the business? A second framework that is as old as time is Michael Porter's 5 Forces. So this is a great classic to come back to when you're zooming out from your business and considering whether to expand your business maybe into a new space in the market, or you're considering launching a new product. This is a quick framework that you can use to really evaluate, is that a wise decision? So there's 5 different forces to consider. One is new entrants. In this space, can new competitors easily enter and compete with us? Our suppliers. Do suppliers in this space control costs and hold a lot of the power? Buyers. Can customers demand lower prices and so they hold a lot of the power? Substitutes. Can customers solve the problem that we would be looking to solve for them easily in another way? And lastly, rivalry. How hard is it to compete in this space today? I've always found this work fascinating. A third and final framework for today is best for optimizing within your business currently. And you may have heard me talk about before, I'm a Six Sigma black belt. It absolutely changed the way I look at businesses for my entire career. And the tool from Six Sigma that I would suggest here is called DMAIC. It's actually an acronym, and it stands for Define, Measure, Analyze, Improve, and Control. So think of this as more of a scientific method that you can use to evaluate how to improve business processes. So it takes a structured, a data-driven approach for how to re-engineer processes to reduce defects, variation, and waste. And of course, Six Sigma, it started in manufacturing, but it is applied to services, all different business processes. So I'll quickly review this framework to see if it can help you organize setting strategy in your business for improvement going forward. So first, define. So you want to be really clear on just defining the problem, who the customer is, what the scope of the project is, and what success will look like. So what is the problem that you're here to solve? Why does it matter? What is the goal? So you want to end up here with a clear problem statement and business case so that everyone can understand it and get on board. Second, you're going to measure. So understand now how the current process is actually performing. So this helps you gauge how bad is the problem that we're facing. So before jumping to solutions on how to make things better, you want to establish now a baseline for what's the current state. How well is the process working today based in data that you measure around that process? So you may want to do process mapping here, but certainly develop some key metrics to set your baseline. And then from there, analyze is the next phase. So this is my favorite. This is when you start uncovering what are the root causes of the problem at hand. Why is this happening? Underneath, so you may be seeing symptoms showing up in certain metrics. You want to go deeper to understand what is causing these poor results. So you can set hypothesis and test it. You can do regression testing. The Pareto chart is a tool that's really popular here, but it's coming up with root causes and having the data to support and measure each one of those root causes so you know where to prioritize your effort. Then next is improve. So now you're going to develop and implement solutions that address those root causes and improve the results that you're measuring. So here you're considering, what is the change that's going to resolve that root cause? So you can do pilot programs here, proof of concept, and go ahead and test with pilots. Are we seeing the anticipated improvement in results or not? Before going ahead and implementing that performance improvement more widely. And then finally, control. So now you just want to set it up so that these improvements, they last, that the solution here is sustainable. So how do you keep the problem from coming back? So this might be using standard operating procedures that now have been revised and updated. You've got documentation, those regular measurements continuing so that you can spot if the problem resurfaces. So this is just one tool from Six Sigma that I thought it would be kind of fun to just get a brief look into. And again, the idea of having these frameworks in your toolkit is that when you're sitting down with that blank piece of paper and that task to really dig into the strategic direction that you are setting for your business, when that can feel so daunting, you've got the time set aside to do it, but you kind of freeze with a little bit of writer's block, feel free to turn to one of these frameworks just to get the wheels turning. And as you do this, remember, you already know your business better than anyone else who could fly in and do some consulting for you and tell you what to do. There's no cavalry coming to figure this out for you. You are the cavalry. And that's not a burden. That's the actual job. And it's the part of the job that most of us are tempted to avoid. But interestingly, you are best suited to do. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Because even after you've done that deep thinking and designing of solutions, even when you know exactly what needs to change and what direction is set out on, a second fear can show up right behind it. Will anyone actually get behind this? That's the second half of the same avoidance. It's not enough to know what to do. Somebody has to say yes to it, or it dies quietly on a slide deck that no one circulates past the first meeting. I think about this almost like a chess match. My son loves chess and strategy games generally. What he loves most is figuring out the plays, thinking a few moves ahead, anticipating what the other side will do in response to what you do, and then building that into the plan before you even make that first move. The same thing with playing sports. He loves having a ball in his hand, but also creating the plays and considering which player should go where so that they can have the best chance of winning the game. Maybe Game of Thrones is more your speed than chess, so use that instead and imagine standing at the table with all the players on the table represented so you can visualize which move made by which player will advance things or throw your plan off track. So this is about getting clear on each stakeholder's own goals, why they are motivated to make the moves they are, and how your decisions may impact things 3 moves out. We are doing this to consider how your idea would make sense inside their world, not just yours. So here's the exercise. Map out the players, everyone with a stake in the decision, and what they're each trying to protect or advance. Where are your natural allies and why? Where will you meet resistance and why? What does each person actually need to see in order to say yes? So let's look at some examples here. Say you're proposing a change that shifts resources away from one team towards another. Finance cares about cost and measurable return. So your pitch to them needs numbers, not vision. Show them the model, show them the downside risk if you don't make the shift. The team losing resources cares about what this signals about their standing, so you need to address that directly instead of hoping it doesn't come up. Maybe that means giving their leader a clear, better story to tell their own team about what comes next for them. Your boss cares about how this reflects on decisions they've already made publicly, so you need to frame it as building on their direction, not correcting it. None of this is playing games. It's just recognizing that the same proposal needs to advance everyone's agenda to get these stakeholders on board. Here's a second example, smaller in scale, but just as real. A client of mine wanted to nominate one of her team members for a promotion that wasn't an obvious fit on paper. Instead of just writing the nomination and hoping it landed, we mapped out who actually influenced that decision. Her boss cared about precedent, whether approving this would create pressure to approve similar cases. HR cared about whether the leveling criteria could support it on paper. A peer on the promotion committee had worked with this team member once, however briefly, and they had a lukewarm impression that could quietly tank the whole nomination if left unaddressed. Once this client saw the board this clearly, she didn't just submit a nomination. She had a short conversation with that peer beforehand, addressed the precedent question directly with her boss before it could become an objection in the room, and she framed the case for HR around the specific criteria they cared about most. The nomination went through. Without that mapping, it would have stalled, and nobody would have ever told her exactly why. This can feel calculated when you write it down, but it isn't. It's just being thoughtful in how you approach proposing your recommendation and then garnering support for it. And here's the thing that usually surprises people. Once we map it out, there's almost always more common ground than it felt like from inside the tension. Sales and marketing, finance and operations. It can feel like everyone's fighting for a different agenda, sometimes by design, as though the organization was set up to have checks and balances, sure. But step back far enough and you will find the same underlying goal sitting beneath all of it, just approached from different angles and measured with different scorecards. I had a client recently negotiate the terms of his exit from a company, along with a legal complaint that came with it. High stakes, a lot of emotion on all sides, and every conversation carrying weight beyond the words being said. At every step, we mapped the incentives of everyone in the room. His manager, who wanted this resolved quietly and quickly. Company leadership, who cared about precedent more than this one case. HR, in the middle, needing to protect the company without appearing unfair. Employee relations, considering both perspectives. The lawyers on both sides, each measuring success differently than their own clients. We didn't just list this out once. We considered every move and the downstream impact 3 steps forward. Once we understood that, we could make informed decisions. This shift changed the trajectory of the negotiation. That mapping is what let him make every decision with real confidence instead of guessing, and to manage his own anxiety along the way, because he wasn't operating on assumptions anymore. He was operating on an honest picture of the board. It's a big part of why he walked away with an outcome everyone could get behind, not just an outcome that he had to accept. I want to be honest about something here too. Not every stakeholder map ends cleanly. Sometimes you do this work and discover the resistance really is immovable, that someone's incentives are fundamentally opposed to what you are proposing, and no amount of framing can change it. That is still valuable information. It tells you where you will need air cover from someone above the conflict, or where you may need to accept a smaller version of the idea for now, rather than walking in blind and being surprised later. Here's what I would invite you to take away from today's episode. The thinking and navigating are not 2 separate skills you either have or don't have. They're both places where the safer, smaller choice can win by default, unless you decide otherwise. Both will have you staying busy without ever actually leading. So you don't need someone else to hand you the strategy. You need to protect the time to find it. And you don't need everyone to agree with you immediately. You need to understand what they're each protecting well enough to bring them along. Now go back to that last question from the exercise. Who needs to understand this and agree to it for it to actually happen? That question is the bridge between the two halves of this approach. It's where thinking clearly has to turn into moving other people, where you could have the best idea and it will stay exactly where you left it as an idea. I think about the leaders that I admire most, the ones who people just naturally wanted to follow. And this is usually what set them apart as visionaries, but also executors. Not because they were smarter than everyone else in the room, or because they had some gift of politics that the rest of us weren't born with. They just made a habit out of doing these two things that many people avoid. They protected the time to think deeply about the business, even when the calendar was fighting them on it. And they took the time to understand what made everyone else around them tick, what they valued and what they wanted to protect, instead of assuming that the loudest objection would be the one that mattered. That's the work. It may be uncomfortable, but it's exactly what you were hired to do. And I'd rather you spend your energy on the work that only you can do than spend it staying safe, doing the straightforward busy work, while the business and your own career wait for someone to actually take the lead. You've got this. Until next time.
Looking for support in applying the principles and strategies in today's episode? Sherry coaches clients one-on-one as their trusted confidant and advisor, helping each client create the work and life they had only dreamed of. To schedule your complimentary career strategy session, go to sherrygregoff.com/apply to book time with her today. It's one simple step that can change everything.